We're back. This is Boomer Life on AM 650. My name is Simone Graywell. Today we're speaking about retirement living with the experts from Revera Retirement Living. Lydia Miller is the Regional Director of Sales in BC, and Rob Gillis, the Executive Director at Revera's Fleetwood Villa. We're also going to chat with Susan Borax coming up about downsizing and decluttering your home. You have a great example of that, for Rob.
Yeah, I just want to share a story. December 29th, 2013 was an amazing day in my life. 6 o'clock in the morning, just after 6 o'clock in the morning, I became a grandfather for the first time, which was the ultimate high. 2 hours later, we received a phone call from Alberta and found out that my mother-in-law was in hospital, and my mother-in-law is the primary caregiver for my father-in-law who has dementia. So we went from this extreme high to an extreme low and panic, and we're trying to manage that from British Columbia.
Wow.
So as you can imagine, we flew out as fast as we could out to Edmonton and assessed the situation. And one of the first things we had to deal with was my mother-in-law's health. The second thing we had to do was find a place for them to live because they couldn't live at home anymore. And then that brought on perhaps the most stressful part of the downsize was looking at this home they'd been in for many, many years, and they had 50 years worth of stuff in this house. And as the son-in-law, I could see that there's some things that might be special to them. We tried to talk to my mother-in-law, what's special to you? My father-in-law, what's special to you? To downsize into a small one-bedroom apartment, and at one of our Revera properties in Edmonton. So at that time, you can imagine the stress that we were going through as a family. Um, I wish I had somebody like Susan available to us. And one of the many downsizing companies we use, Susan's is one of the great companies that we do refer to our families.
Again, welcoming Susan Borax to the studio from Good Riddance Professional Organizing Solutions. Susan, tell us a little bit about Good Riddance Professional Organizing Solutions.
Well, Good Riddance has been operating in the Lower Mainland for nearly 10 years. We like to tell people that we help people manage the struggle that they have with clutter that they're unable to handle by themselves. And so that really focuses on a broad range of different types of clients, anybody from new mothers who have a couple of toddlers running around and have certainly lost the organizing gene that they used to have, to people that are running home-based businesses. They could be self-employed professionals, need help with a home office. But very early on in the life of our business, we decided that we wanted to specialize in working with seniors who are at a particular stage in their lives where they need a lot of assistance, especially when they are transitioning to smaller quarters or to retirement communities like Revera.
And Rob mentioned that it was 50 years worth of memories in a home, and that is probably the case for most people. So how does it work? How does the process work with starting with a senior who's just about to downsize?
Well, initially we go in and we do a complimentary consultation in the home. We call that a CSI, a clutter scene investigation, and that really gives us the opportunity
I like it.
to size up the person, understand if that person has disabilities, whether those be cognitive or physical, strong emotional attachment to their things, how nervous they are, what other kind of help they may have from other family members. And then we come up with a specific customized plan because no two people have one way to do this.
Do you find there's often challenges and struggles with someone wanting to let go of their belongings because there's so many memories and there's so many things that you've had your whole life? How do you just get rid of it?
It's very, very difficult. They say that moving is one of the most stressful life experiences, and the older you get, the harder that is. And attachment, especially sentimental value, plays large in this space. So we have a number of different strategies, to help people get through that. For example, if they've got huge collections, we recommend that they downsize the collections to take maybe a few pieces of something because they'll have room for that if they're going, let's say, from 2,500 square feet to 700 square feet, or to take photos of things or put them up on the internet. But often we find that when we have situations where people are reluctant to give up things, but we have something else that we can do with them, for example, give them to the women's shelter or give them to the hospice society or organizations that use those goods to fund their programs, it's amazing how that really makes a difference, and people are often able to make those decisions.
It's very emotional.
It's extremely emotional.
What we see on a regular basis is when our seniors move in and they finally have relinquished their lives of all their really not necessary items, it's a massive weight lifting right off their shoulders. They stand up straighter. They have more energy because the pressure of all this stuff that they have. How much emotional attachment can you have to a pillow? A pillow that's been sitting on your couch for 20 years, probably full of dust mites, not the cleanest thing in the world, but it's that emotional attachment is I find it incredible. And having somebody to help direct our seniors so that they can let go of those types of items and keep what's really important makes such a difference.
And it could even be things such as clothing that maybe you wore in your 20s or your 30s or 40s, but really you're not going to be wearing that. But you just, it's that memory of being able to wear that.
I've got clothes and shoes like that.
Yeah. And we're all guilty of it. I mean, springtime, everybody kind of starts to think about decluttering our own lives and decluttering our brains. If you're just joining us, this is Boomer Life on AM 650 with Simone Graywell. We're speaking about retirement living with the experts from Revera Retirement. Lydia Miller is the Regional Director of Sales in BC, and Rob Gillis, the Executive Director at Revera's Fleetwood Villa. Also in studio with us is Susan Borax from Good Riddance and talking about downsizing. Now tell us a little bit about Practically Daughters Senior Move Managers.
Okay, that's the division where we assist both seniors and their adult children with helping to make these transitions into the housing communities. And so essentially, once we go in and we do our initial consultation, we can be helpful in several different ways. One of which is if they have to prepare their house to be able to make the transition, then we can declutter them and help to stage them so that they can get the house ready to go onto the market.
Okay.
We also help them pack up things, whether they're going to be going with them to Revera or whether they're going to be going to other places like the charities, or we can help them sell things, or we can arrange to have everything recycled. We have our own movers, or we hire other movers on behalf of our clients where they're on site to supervise the move, and then we can unpack and we can set up the residence, because the most important thing is being able to find things after somebody has moved. You know, if they've been used to where something is located in their homes for many, many years, and all of a sudden everything is in someplace else, that can be very stressful, and it can make the transition more difficult.
Sorry, if I may, Susan,
Yeah.
I know you work more closely with the on-site management teams that we have, and I kind of float around, but I'm wondering, what would you and your team at Good Riddance in your 10 years of working in this business find to be your biggest challenge?
I still think the biggest challenge is emotional attachment, especially with the age group. They just have so many decisions to make. It is so difficult. And so that's why we recommend that people really, really take the time to do this properly. It's not something that can happen in 2 weeks. It took an entire lifetime to accumulate all of these possessions.
I've heard there's a little bit of guilt attached sometimes, too.
Well, there's guilt and sadness about, saying goodbye to things that are imbued with memories. It's actually acknowledging that a whole section of your life has passed. But we try to teach our clients to organize for the present first, for the future second, and then the past.
And everything else comes in later. Now, with children, sometimes there might be a son or daughter who's thinking, I can take on the challenge, as you did, Rob, and think that we can help mom and dad declutter our home. But why would you suggest bringing in somebody different? Because as a child, you might have some of that emotional attachment to certain things that your mother or father has always had.
Yes. Well, what we try to do is to work with the families as much as possible, but often there is no family or no family that is really close by. We just had a situation a couple of weeks ago where one of the daughters, they were one of 5 siblings, decided to buy her parents a condominium so that they could actually enjoy the proceeds from the sale of the house, and that would fund their retirement. And so when they came back from vacation, they found out that they were moving. Well, this was fine for this particular daughter, but the other siblings were not so fine with this because they too have their associations with that home. So sometimes it helps to have a third party, people who are a little bit more objective, who are detached, And often, we become marriage counselors or we become arbitrators, with different members of the family. So, and people sometimes will accept when the decision comes from us with a recommendation, as opposed to, the typical rankling that you might see going on within a family and sibling rivalries and things of that sort.
Susan, I lived through that actually in January. I have two brother-in-laws that live in Edmonton, who are very close to my mother and father-in-law, yet being the son-in-law who was the most distant, they know me the least, I was seen as the authoritative figure. And it was always, Rob, what do you think? And having that separation, I think, helped the process. So I agree with what you're saying.
And tell us, Susan, about the 7 sins of downsizing.
Okay. These are what we call the success prevention techniques, things that we've observed over the years with people who are very well-intentioned, but they seem to go astray. I talked about providing enough time, so you really shouldn't underestimate how long the process will take. It's taken years to accumulate all these possessions, so you really have to be able to give it the time so that you don't have regrets, you don't make the decisions that you're sorry about later on. A second one is that people, when they start to get enthusiastic about this, will start going around to their entire house and doing a little bit of work in each room. After a few hours or a couple of days of this, it looks like a bomb went off in the house. And this can be very demotivating because, by its very nature, decluttering is difficult and messy. We always tell our clients it's going to get worse before it gets better because you're pulling everything out of the closets and cupboards that you haven't examined, those boxes with that protective coating of dust. And so we say start small and stay in one room or one area before you proceed to the next. And we usually start with storage areas first. We also tell people never to leave their homes empty-handed. Every time you have to go out of the house, think about, well, can I find a book drop or a clothing drop so that it happens? It's not just waiting for one single pickup. And that can also encourage people to keep moving forward. We also tell people don't throw money at this. In other words, even if you're going to use a storage locker, perhaps when you're staging the house, just don't leave that stuff. I mean, people don't want to make decisions, and so it's just an avoidance technique, and it can be very costly over time.
And as well, if you are just joining us right now, you're listening to Boomer Life on AM 650. My name is Simone Graywell. Today we're speaking about retirement living with the experts from Revera Retirement Living. Lydia Miller, Regional Director of Sales in BC. Rob Gillis is the Executive Director at Revera's Fleetwood Villa. And the website again is reveraliving.com. And also with us is Susan Borax from Good Riddance talking about downsizing. Now, Susan, I know off air we were chatting a little bit about some of the downfalls of even having a storage unit.
Yes, well, the problem with the storage unit is that you put it in there and you forget about it. And so then the money just comes off the credit card every month. We once had a client who figured out in 8 years that she spent $40,000 in storage fees. And it wasn't even the things that she actually thought were in there. So, storage has a purpose, but it should be judicious.
Well, thank you. Sorry, I think we're going to cut to, how much time do we have? Did you wave us? We'll wrap it up? Okay. We'll have more with Lydia, Rob, and Susan right after this on Boomer Life, AM 650.
It's all about the baby boomer lifestyle. Boomer Life on AM 650.